Many centuries ago, Caliph Harun al-Rashid had a habit of disguising himself and walking through the city to see how his people lived. One day, while walking through the marketplace, something caught his eye. In a corner of the busy market sat an old blind beggar. He looked very frail and weak. He was asking people for money, but the way he begged was extremely strange. Whenever someone gave him a coin, he would grab their hand tightly and make a very unusual demand that the Caliph had never heard of before in his entire life. The Caliph watched as one man gave the beggar 1 dirham. The moment the beggar received the coin, he grabbed the man's sleeve and said with tears in his eyes, "Oh, kind-hearted soul, you have given me charity. Now please do me one more favor. For the sake of Allah, slap me hard on my cheek." The passerby was completely shocked. He tried to pull his sleeve free and said, "Are you crazy? I just gave you money. Why would I slap you? Have you lost your mind?" But the beggar did not let go. He cried and said, "My brother, if you cannot slap me, then take your money back. I have sworn by Allah that I will not accept anyone's charity until they slap me as punishment for my mistake." The passerby had no choice but to give in. He lightly slapped the beggar on his cheek and walked away.
This scene was deeply strange and shocking. Caliph Harun al-Rashid and his vizier Jafar, who were watching from a distance, were both left speechless. They noticed that every single person who gave the beggar money had to follow this same condition. First the slap, then the blessing. A strong curiosity grew inside the Caliph's heart. He thought to himself, what is the secret behind this blindness and this strange self-punishment? Why would any person willingly choose to be humiliated? The Caliph decided that he would get to the bottom of this mystery. The Caliph quietly left the market. But the moment he returned to his palace, he gave his vizier Jafar an order. "Jafar, bring that blind beggar to my court immediately. I want to hear his story from his own lips. I believe there is a great pain or a terrible secret buried inside his heart." The vizier followed the order and sent soldiers to respectfully bring the beggar to the royal court. When the beggar learned that the Caliph had summoned him, he began to tremble with fear. The court was in session. There was complete silence everywhere. The blind beggar was brought and made to stand before the Caliph's throne. The Caliph asked in a gentle voice, "Old man, what is your name? Where are you from? And most importantly, why do you make people slap you in exchange for charity? We have never seen anything like this in our entire lives. Tell us the truth, or your silence will force us to be harsh."
The beggar lowered his head, and tears began to fall from his eyes. Then, in a trembling voice, he said, "O Commander of the Faithful, my name is Baba Hakimullah. I was not always blind and poor like this. There was a time when I lived like a king. I owned a caravan of 80 camels, and I was a very successful merchant. But my condition today is not bad luck. It is the result of my own greed and my own sin. This slap is the punishment I give myself for that sin." The Caliph was astonished. He said, "A man who once owned 80 camels is now begging for a single meal? What happened that brought you so low? Tell us your full story." Baba Hakimullah took a long, deep breath, as if turning the pages of his past. He said, "Your Majesty, this story is full of pain and carries a very deep lesson. It begins on that unfortunate day when I was traveling through the desert with my camels loaded with goods." Baba Hakimullah began his story. "Your Majesty, I was traveling through the desert with my 80 camels. My business was going very well. I was proud of my wealth and felt like I owned the world. Along the way, I came across a dervish. He was dressed in very simple clothes and was resting on a large rock. We greeted each other and shared a meal together. As we talked, the dervish said something that woke up the sleeping greed inside me. He said, 'Oh Hakimullah, you seem so happy with just these camels and a few coins. But I know a place in this desert where there is so much hidden treasure that even if you loaded all 80 of your camels, the treasure would still not run out. Gold, silver,
diamonds, and precious gems are buried there like mountains. The moment I heard the word treasure, my eyes lit up. I said to him, "Oh, holy man, if you take me to that place, I promise we will split the treasure equally between us." The dervish agreed. He said, "Very well, Hakimullah, I will take you there. But the condition is this. We load all 80 camels with treasure. Then 40 camels will be mine and 40 will be yours." Your Majesty, at that moment my greed had already taken over. Without thinking for even a second, I agreed. I thought to myself, 40 camels loaded with gold would make me the richest man in the entire world. We both changed our direction and headed toward the most remote part of the desert, a place where both death and treasure were waiting for us. After a long journey, we arrived at a narrow and frightening valley between two tall black mountains. The dervish gathered some wood and recited a mysterious prayer. Before our eyes, the two mountains slowly moved apart and a cave door opened. Inside was an unimaginable treasure. Gold, silver, diamonds, and precious gems beyond anything I had ever seen.
We loaded all 80 camels with treasure. Then the dervish recited the prayer again. The mountains closed back together and the treasure was hidden from the world forever. Now we stood before 80 heavily loaded camels. As we had promised, we divided them equally. 40 camels for me and 40 for the dervish. We embraced each other and said our goodbyes. The dervish turned toward his path, and I began walking toward mine with my 40 camels. But your Majesty, the further I walked, the louder the devil inside me became. A thought entered my mind. This dervish is just a simple holy man. What does he need all this wealth for? He can live happily in the forest with nothing. But I am a businessman. I am the one who deserves all of this. The devil kept whispering in my ear. I thought, 40 camels loaded with treasure going to a poor wandering man is such a waste. He cannot even manage them properly. But if I could get those 40 camels too, I would not just be the richest man in Baghdad, but in the entire world. Greed dropped a curtain over my eyes. I left my camels where they were and ran back toward the dervish, calling out to him.
The dervish stopped when he saw me coming. He asked gently, "What happened, Hakimullah? Did you lose your way?" I reached him and said very cleverly, "Oh, holy dervish, I was just thinking on the road. You are a man of God, and you stay far away from the things of this world. Managing 40 camels is beyond what you need. These animals are stubborn and difficult. You will get so busy with them that you will forget your prayers and worship. My advice is that you give me back 10 of the camels and keep 30. 30 is more than enough for you." I knew this demand was completely shameless, but my greed was pushing me. Your Majesty, what surprised me was that the dervish did not take offense at all. He smiled and said, "You are right, Hakimullah. I value my freedom and my worship far more than any wealth. If you feel you can handle them better, then take them." He immediately gave me 10 camels without any argument. I was very happy, but my thirst was not satisfied. The moment I turned to leave, the devil said again, "Did you see how easily he gave you 10 camels? He clearly has no real attachment to wealth."
So I turned back to the dervish and said, "My brother, I still feel that 30 camels is too many for you. Why bring such a burden upon yourself out here alone in the desert? Please, give me 10 more." The dervish looked at me with deep eyes. Perhaps he could already see the growing greed inside me, but he did not even sigh. He simply said, "Take them, Hakimullah. If it gives you peace, take these 10 as well." Now, I had 60 camels, and he had only 20 left. Your Majesty, greed is a well with no bottom. I kept going back to him again and again, and each time he gave with open hands and a calm heart. Finally, it reached the point where I demanded all 40 of his camels. He kept not a single one for himself and gave them all to me. Now, I owned all 80 camels and
all the treasure. I should have thanked him and walked away, but my greed was still not finished. When the dervish began walking away with empty hands, my eyes fell on something in his pocket. I remembered that he had picked up a small tin box from inside the cave. A thought came to me. Surely there must be something inside that box worth more than all this treasure combined. That is why he gave away everything else but kept the box. I stopped him again and said, "Oh, dervish, you have given me everything. Your generosity has no equal. But what will you do with that little box? Give it to me as well, so that you are completely free."
The dervish turned and said firmly, "Hakimullah, stop! I have given you everything I had, but do not ask for this box. It is of no use to you, and it carries a great danger inside it." But was I the kind of man who would listen? I stubbornly demanded the box. Finally, with great reluctance and frustration, he took it out and placed it in my hands. I quickly opened it. Inside was a type of dark coal powder. I looked at it with surprise and said, "Just coal? You made such a fuss over this? What is so special about it?" The dervish answered with a very serious face, "O Hakimullah, this is no ordinary coal. This is the coal of the Jinn. If it is applied to a person's left eye, they can see all the hidden treasures buried beneath the earth. But if it is mistakenly applied to the right eye, that person will be blind forever." The moment I heard the word treasure, I lost all sense. I thought to myself, if I apply this coal, I will be able to find every hidden treasure in the entire world. These 80 camels would be nothing compared to what I could find. I said to the dervish, "Oh, good man, apply this coal to my left eye. Let me see its power with my own eyes."
The dervish warned me many times. He said greed always leads to destruction. He told me to be grateful for what I already had. But greed had covered my eyes with a thick, blind curtain. I did not listen to a single word he said. With no other choice, the dervish applied the coal to my left eye. Your Majesty, the moment it touched my eye, a whole new world opened before me. I could clearly see mountains of gold buried beneath the desert sand. I could see rivers of precious gems flowing underground. I was so overjoyed that I began to dance with excitement. But instead of thanking God for this miracle, my greed crossed all limits of madness. A dark thought entered my mind. If one eye with the coal can see so much treasure, then perhaps both eyes with the coal could help me actually take and own all of it. I turned to the dervish and said, "My friend, now apply the coal to my right eye as well." The dervish stepped back in horror and shouted, "Hakimullah, fear Allah! Have you forgotten what I told you? If this coal touches your right eye, you will be blind forever. There will be nothing but darkness for you in this world." But I told myself he was lying. I believed he simply did not want me to have fee power. I said to him angrily, "You are jealous of me. You do not want me to reach my full potential. I do not need your advice. Just apply the coal to my other eye."
The dervish begged me. He swore by Allah. He pleaded again and again. But I refused to hear even one word. I told him, "If you will not do it, I will force you." Finally, the dervish gave up with a broken heart and said, "Very well, Hakimullah. If this is what is written in your fate, then there is nothing I can do. Go ahead. Suffer the consequences of your own choices." With trembling hands, the dervish took the coal, and the moment he applied it to my right eye, Your Majesty, everything went dark. The treasure, the desert, the camels, the light, everything disappeared in an instant. It felt as if someone had switched off the light of my eyes forever. I screamed, "Oh, dervish, what has happened? I am blind. I cannot see anything." The dervish said with deep sorrow in his voice, "I warned you, but your greed has blinded you." Your Majesty, I fell to the ground, writhing in agony. I crawled to the dervish and grabbed his feet, crying and begging. "Oh, good man, please, forgive me. I give you everything. Take all 80 camels. Take all the gold. Take everything. Just give me back my sight. The dervish pulled his hand away and said in a firm voice, Hakimullah, it is too late now. This blindness is not of your body. It is of your greed. No wealth in this world can bring back your sight.
What happened next was the most terrible consequence of my greed. The dervish took hold of all 80 camel ropes right in front of my blind eyes and walked away with all of them. Every bit of treasure I had collected left with him, and I was left alone in the burning desert sand, blind, helpless, with nothing. I kept screaming, but there was no one to hear me, only silence. I wandered through that empty desert for several days. I was on the edge of death from hunger and thirst. Every moment I remembered the dervish's words, "Be grateful for what you have." If I had been satisfied with 40 camels, I would have been a wealthy man today. If I had been satisfied with even 10 camels, I would have had a good life. But I wanted everything, and in return, I received nothing. I became like a dog with no home and no shelter. By the grace of Allah, a passing caravan found me and saved my life. They brought me to this city. When I arrived here, I realized that begging was my only option. But my conscience tormented me, so I made an oath. I swore that every time I accept charity from someone, I will ask them to slap me as punishment for my sin, so that I never forget for a single moment that this is the result of my own doing. This slap is not for my cheek, it is for my greed.
As Baba Hakimullah finished his story, his voice broke completely and he began to sob in the royal court. With his hands joined together, he said to the Caliph, "That is my story, O Commander of the Faithful. I am a merchant who dug his own grave with his own hands. I do not ask people for money. I ask them for punishment for my mistake, so that perhaps Allah will forgive me on the Day of Judgment." Caliph Harun al-Rashid was completely stunned. Every person in the court had tears in their eyes. The Caliph took a long breath and said softly, "There is no doubt that greed destroys everything. Hakimullah, your story teaches more than 1,000 sermons. You made a terrible mistake, but your regret is genuine, and you have already paid the highest price with the loss of your 2 eyes." The Caliph then turned to his vizier Jafar and commanded, "Jafar, assign a peaceful room in the back of the palace to Baba Hakimullah. All his needs, food, clothing, and medicine will be provided from the royal treasury. From this day forward, he will never have to beg again." Then the Caliph himself took Baba Hakimullah by the hand and said, "A wise elder, you will never allow yourself to be slapped again. You have already suffered far more punishment than any mistake deserves. You will spend the rest of your life here in this palace. Every guest who comes, every soldier who passes, every young man who comes to this court to learn, you will tell them your true story, so that no other Hakimullah ever falls into this pit of greed. Every word that comes from your lips will be the greatest lesson for the children and the adults of Baghdad."
From that day on, Baba Hakimullah lived in a small, clean courtyard of the palace. From morning until evening, people came to sit with him. Young merchants, newly wealthy men, and curious students. They would gather around the old blind man, and he would tell them his story in his trembling but warm voice. "My children, I owned 80 camels, and yet I still wanted everything. And I lost everything. There is true peace only in being grateful for what Allah has given you. The eyes of greed are never satisfied, and the eyes that fill with greed will one day lose their light entirely." Every time he finished his story, the entire courtyard would fall into complete silence. Then a young man would take his hand, with tears in his eyes, and swear that he would never take what belongs to another person. Baba Hakimullah never got his sight back, but his story opened the eyes of thousands and thousands of people. Whenever anyone in Baghdad spoke of greed, the people would smile and say, "Go to Baba Hakimullah."
he will tell you exactly where greed leads.
The greatest lesson from this story is this: a person's true enemy is not outside. It is the greed that sits quietly inside their own heart. Hakimullah had 80 camels, wealth, and a successful business. But the flash of one hidden treasure stole away all his wisdom. This story teaches us that the person who always chases just a little more and a little more will always end up with empty hands. Goodness, trust in God, and contentment lift a person up, while greed blinds a person. Sometimes in the heart, sometimes in the eyes, and sometimes in their very destiny. In the end, victory belongs only to the one who learns to be truly grateful for everything that Allah has given them.